When I worked for this other investor, I saw the wealth potential. He owned a 40-unit apartment complex, and he went and did a cash out refinance of the 40-unit apartment complex, took that cash, bought the business. We didn't need to have hundreds and thousands of dollars in his bank account. He pulled the equity out of this property and was able to use that to buy another business. And as I worked for him, I saw that was how the game was played.
Welcome back to today's episode of the Lady Landlords Podcast. I am your host, Becky Nova, and today we have Ashley Kehr here. She is actually the co-host of the Real Estate Rookie Podcast through BiggerPockets. So Ashley, thank you so much for meeting with me today.
I'm so happy to be here and to be on the show.
Yes, I got to be on your show, the Real Estate Rookie, a couple years ago now it was. So I'm so happy that now to have you on my show is just really kind of awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time just coming on and sharing your story. But I always like just a fun, quick introduction of just who you are outside of real estate. Would you mind just introducing yourself to our community here?
Sure. Yeah. So I went to school to be a CPA, an accountant. And after college, I lasted about 6 months in that field. Then I started working for another investor and I became his property manager. I handled all of his finances, all of his bank loans, everything like that. So I got a really good look into what real estate investing was, and I became addicted. And I started to build a small multifamily buy and hold portfolio with a couple short-term rentals. I have 3 kids, 3 boys, and we live outside of Buffalo, New York. And that's primarily where I invest also. I've done a couple of house flips in Seattle with a partner, but pretty much everything has been in the Buffalo market.
I'm going to talk a lot more about investing in New York in a few minutes. But you said just being exposed to it, that you got addicted. What drew you to that?
Yeah. So when I worked for this other investor, I saw the wealth potential that was in real estate. So for example, he was purchasing this business when I first started working for him. And he was purchasing the business with all cash, and it was a lot of money. And the way he was able to do that was he owned a 40-unit apartment complex, and he went and did a cash out refinance of the 40-unit apartment complex, took that cash, bought the business. And I was like, wow. So he didn't need to have hundreds and thousands of dollars in his bank account. He pulled the equity out of this property and was able to use that to buy another business. And as I worked for him, I saw that was how the game was played, per se. That was his strategy of how he was able to acquire more and more, was just building up equity. People were paying down his mortgages every single year. He wasn't putting any money into them. And then he could just go and tap into it, pull that money out, and go and buy something else. So that was just like a huge eye opener for me.
That is such a very different world. When you had mentioned that you really wanted to go to school and become an accountant, I mean, I can't think of a more safe, structured, just very standard like career path where people are like, yep, I'm going to do this and that's what this is going to look like, until I retire, right?
Yeah.
And just a very, very stable industry. Real estate investing and really having your eyes open to leverage and monies and how that cash can work differently. That is such a diversion from accountant. How did that feel, making that leap from something that would be not only just regular paycheck, very stable, but to then saying, no, full-time investor, which really is an entrepreneur?
Yeah. And my husband at the time, he was a dairy farmer. So he was self-employed and his income was very unsteady and not reliable. So the biggest pain point actually was that the health insurance that I was getting for those 6 months was that we would now have to go through like his dairy co-op to get the insurance. And it was very expensive. But as far as like the stable money, I was making peanuts compared to what he was making on the farm anyway. So the money I was making on an accountant, we didn't need that money. It wasn't enough money to pay any bills or anything like that. It was a very small salary. And that was part of the reason for me to leave. Was I felt so disappointed because I was an intern there for 2 years. And when that time came for the salary to be presented, I was, oh my God, finally I'm going to be making a whole bunch of money. And it was not as much money as I expected. So it was very easy for me to leave in that aspect. And I remember the manager at the firm saying, well, I don't even make the money that I want to make. And it's like, okay, that even seals the deal even more for me. Like, why would I want to stay here and continue to work if you as a partner aren't even making the type of money that you want? So I really just wanted something where I could have opportunity to make more money. And at the time, I didn't even know that was real estate investing. When I worked for
Mhm.
this investor, I actually quit because I was just going to get pregnant, be a stay-at-home mom. And then I got this opportunity to work from home, work part-time. I could make my own hours. And that was being a property manager for this investor. And then it just kind of like snowballed from there, the opportunities.
That's so sad to hear kind of this person that once again being in an internship. So you're clearly looking up to him as just what your career growth would look like, what your
Mhm.
future life would look like. Clearly you were young at that point in time. And all of a sudden to find out that this other person that's probably what 20, 30 years in the future for you,
Yeah.
and he's unhappy and he's not making the money that even you wanted to make. That's so
Yeah.
disappointing.
And you know what? It wasn't a he, it was actually a she. So I related even more to her.
Oh,
And I looked at her life like, you're here on weekends, you're not with your family. She got married a lot later in life. And I feel like part of that was because she invested so much time and energy into her career. And I wanted to have kids younger and be involved with my family and things like that. So it actually was more relatable. Like, you're not even making the money you make. I remember she purchased a house when she got married. And I just remember her stressing about it, like they might be house poor because of this. This is kind of outside their budget and things like that. And it was just like, I never want to have to worry about that. So there's just lots of different things that I looked at her as I thought when I first started there that this is what I want. I want to be partner. This is my life that
mhm.
I want. And as I watched this person, it became this is definitely what I don't want in my life.
That's really cool. I mean, once again, like that's not exactly the mirror people usually look for or hope to kind of get out of an
Yeah.
internship or something.
Yeah.
But I'm really happy that it worked out, that it really showed you, if you continue down that more traditional route, what that life would have looked like. And you were able to realize so young that that was not the future that you wanted. I feel
Yeah.
like so many people end up staying on that path, still trying, still hoping, or thinking that it'll be different for them. But the fact that you actually had then this woman in front of you that literally was the life that you realized you did not want and gave you the opportunity to make a change, that's really fantastic. Do you know
Yeah.
whatever happened to her?
What's so funny is because I actually looked the other day because I drove by the old office and there was a different name. So it was still an accounting office, but different partner names. And her name was
Yeah.
she was never a named partner, but it was different than when I had worked there. And so I looked it up and the company she had bought for just her office, the office she was the manager of, was actually bought out by another accounting firm. And she was still there listed as partner of it. But I'm sure that wasn't an easy transition. Like, worked for this one company for so long and now you're bought out by someone else. I'm sure that kind of puts you down towards the bottom of the company as a whole. You're being brought in, that you're not
Right.
on the top. But I have no idea. But I did look that up the other day when I drove by, that they were actually bought out by somebody else.
Right. And then for that example, you have then this woman that's worked for this company, became partner, has been there for so many years. Now
Mhm.
all of a sudden, people above her made decisions and her
Yeah.
seniority or her
Yes. Yeah.
opportunities just goes right down the tube.
Yeah.
And that's something that was completely out of her control, probably not even related to if she was a good employee, not a good employee. None of those things were probably considered because
Right.
the decision makers don't always take every cog in the wheel, which is really
Yeah.
what we are as employees in corporate America. They're
Yeah.
not looking at what that looks like on that larger scale and that individual scale of their employees and people that make
Hmm.
the business run. Well, I'm
Yeah.
glad you got out. You mentioned clearly once again from a financial perspective, it was a little bit easier to make that shift, right?
Yeah.
But you then did say in there that your goal at the time was also to have babies young, be
Mhm.
that stay-at-home mom. We have this conversation a lot in Lady Landlords that want to do something similar and then have those conversations with their partner about what the family dynamic is going to look like, about mom getting invested into real estate. How does that change and impact family dynamics, all that? How did that conversation go talking to your husband about that setup for the family when you then decided to move towards real estate full time?
Yeah. So when I was working part-time, and when I bought my first property, I took on a partner who had all the capital. So I felt like my first investment was very easy to bring to my husband then because I wasn't risking our life savings. I really wasn't doing anything different than what I do every single day. So if a tenant called me and we're out to dinner, like that was already happening to me. So I felt like it had such a little impact on our
Mhm.
life that it really wasn't a big deal. And honestly, from that point on, he was always so supportive of it. It would be like, oh, just so you know, like I bought a house the other day, or, something like that. But he had the farm, he had his business, and then
Right.
I had my business doing real estate. And there was in the beginning, the first two properties that I decided to buy on my own
Mhm.
without a partner, my income, even as a property manager, wasn't enough for the banks to give me a loan on the properties. So he even did co-sign on two of my rental properties with me. And then before we got married, he had owned a farmhouse that he
Mhm.
had bought from his parents that was completely paid off, and he let me put a line of credit on that I used to go and buy properties with, and then I pay off the line of credit and things like that too. And
That's
even
awesome.
now we've been separated for 3-4 years, and we haven't gotten divorced because it actually benefits us a lot to stay married financially and tax wise, and we co-parent great, everything like that. But I still use the line of credit. He collects the rental income from that farmhouse. So, like, there's still different ways that we're able to take advantage and support each other without actually being together, too, which I think has always made it very easy to build our businesses separate and
Mhm.
successfully, where neither one of us has ever had to actually lean on the other one.
I love that you made that really work for you and your family, right,
Mhm.
in those situations and have that communication just to really say, like, what really is gonna make the most sense for us, and that's what you went for. How was it for you to have that kind of identity shift from being the stay-at-home mom with your boys to now saying, "I'm gonna be badass real estate investor"?
Yeah. So when I decided to be a stay-at-home mom, when I quit the accounting firm, I put in my 2 weeks notice, and I found a week into that I was pregnant with my first child. So that was in
Wow.
February. I quit in the middle of tax season, so everyone hated me. But that was at February. And then by April 1st was when I started part-time as a property manager working from home. So I never actually had that time where I was completely a stay-at-home mom. And then I had my first child that year, and then my other two followed a couple years later. But I worked like I literally, when I think it was my second child was born, I was in the delivery room on the phone with the project manager for a property we were building. But it was just I just love my job so much, and
Yeah.
there are definitely things I look back on as to, like, I'm sitting in my home office, my child is on the floor, like, obviously wanting my attention. I'm just, like, trying to finish work, and I did a really bad job of having my kids at home thinking I could balance both, and I finally learned it was better for me to send the kids to my mom's for 4 hours or to send them outside with my husband on the farm, and then I sit and focus and get that work done, and then that intentional time with my kids is there, and that took me a long time to learn as to, like, it's okay just because you work from home doesn't mean your kids have to be there. It's okay to have somebody watch them. That's not a bad thing, because the 4 hours you spend getting work done gives you another, 6 hours to actually spend quality intentional time instead of spending all day with them, half focusing on them, half focusing on work. And your kids are going to know that you're not paying attention to them. You're more involved in your phone, you're more involved in your computer, what's going on. So even today, I try as hard as I can that when the kids are home from school, there may be like a little bit of work I have to catch up. So it's like intentional time. Let's get your lunches ready for tomorrow. Let's do your homework, things like that. And a lot
Mhm.
of days they spend after school with their dad for an hour, and then I get them. So he has that time with them. And then it's okay, like phones away, computer away, which as an entrepreneur can be really hard to do. But any days that you get to have that intentional time with your kids, I really try to get that.
I love that not only you have the intentional time with your kids, but you also have the intentional time for you and your business.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Even just saying, okay, this moment in time, I'm going to focus on my portfolio, my rehab, whatever it may be. You
Yep.
also gave yourself that space and blocked that time off so you could really focus there, because our businesses sometimes are like kids. But so you really gave yourself that time and did what you needed for you. And we're also there doing what you needed to do for your family. So it was very intentional time on both sides.
And you know what? It's funny. I feel like it's maybe been a little detrimental to me in a way, as to like, now I just can't like pick up work and be like, okay, I have like 15 minutes here or an hour here. It's like I need to have those several hours to just crush through work. So I went on a cruise a couple months ago with my friend and her family and her kids. And I took my kids, and she's a workaholic. She's also a real estate investor. And every single morning, while the kids were kind of waking up and getting breakfast and stuff, she would just work. And I
Mhm.
did not work the whole time I was there. I was like, I just can't like get into working in these little pockets of time. Like, I did everything I needed to before that cruise so that I could just not have to work. I could hang out with the kids the whole time. And then when I got back, I got back into work mode. But it's really funny because I used to be the person that would be like, you know what, I'm just going to do this every morning. I'll work a little bit at night while we're on vacation. But now it's gotten to the point where I don't even check my email when I'm on vacation.
I love that you said that, because that's actually a shift I recently made. I used to
Yeah.
do exactly the same thing where it was
Mhm.
like, no, I'll just get up a little bit earlier than everybody else.
Yep.
And before we're going to breakfast, before we're going to the beach, whatever it is, let me just knock
Yeah.
out like a couple hours of
Yep.
work.
Yeah.
Or, okay, we'll go enjoy the day. But then this evening, because if you haven't noticed, I like to get tan down in my Dominican beach.
Yes.
So I would be like, okay, great. I'll go out now while it's sunny. But then now in the evening when the sun goes down, okay, now I'll do
Yep.
work then. But then the
Yeah.
whole day sitting on the beach, I'd be like, okay, gotta get in, gotta get showered,
Mhm.
gotta get dressed, gotta do my hair, gotta do makeup because I gotta be on this call for this, or I now have to
Yeah.
do these hours of
Yep.
this. And it was so hard to get back into it. And then I never felt like I was actually relaxing or enjoying my time or really being present, because I always either had the emails that I answered that morning being like, well, now I wonder if Ashley
Right. Yeah.
responded. Like, oh, I gotta go check that. I wonder if I got a message. I wonder what the outcome of that
Yep.
was. So that was either still always on my mind, or then it was always this like looming need to work later.
Mhm.
And so I've recently switched, just like you're saying, to be like,
Yeah.
this is either time on or this is time off. I did this as a little poll in Lady Landlords recently, where I said, would you rather work 4 half days
Mhm.
and be 4 half days of work, 4 half days off? Or would you rather like 2 days full working and 2 days full off? And that
Yeah.
was actually the option that people chose.
Yeah.
Our members actually said, no, I'm either going to be like all there or like
Mhm.
all wherever it is that I am.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that you realize that too. And that's something that it's hard, but I am really trying to implement something very similar.
Yeah, and I feel like, and maybe you felt the same, that it was almost like a bragging right. Like, I get to work on vacation. Like, I'm so lucky I have a virtual job that I can work from anywhere. And, it's really like changed. Like, I'm so glad of that because I still could go and work from wherever. Like, if I want to go be gone for 2 weeks at a lake house, I can still pick 2 days to work or whatever it may be.
Right.
But I used to have that mindset of like, I'm so lucky that I can do my job anywhere. And I really had to focus on, okay, even though I can do it anywhere, it doesn't mean that I should have to do it everywhere. And now it's even greater that I don't have to do it all the time too.
Right.
So
Well, they said with work from home that, especially like during the pandemic, that people actually ended up working more hours when they
wow.
work from home. And
Yeah.
it was interesting. Literally last night, I was at a birthday dinner, and a friend of mine, he has a job that has to be on site. He does not do a
Mhm.
work from home. His industry, it's just not would ever fit for that.
Y-
So it was interesting because there were people that didn't show up to the birthday dinner. And my friend kind of remarked, he's like, it's really interesting because he's saying he's stuck working, but he works from home. Like, all
Oh,
you gotta do is like close the laptop. Like, what do you
yeah.
mean? And it was just so interesting to hear this perspective from somebody that does not have that opportunity. And it kind of clicked to me. I was like, you're right. The
Yeah.
benefit to work from home or having a virtual business, whatever that may be, or having a little bit of something outside that 9 to 5
Yeah.
world, like being a landlord or real estate investor, is because we want that freedom, which means we get to set the boundaries. We get to
Right.
determine what that work looks like.
Yeah.
And somehow we put ourselves in positions where we're spending more time, more energy, stressing ourselves out more, missing birthday dinners, missing being present
Yeah.
in the moment with our families. But yet that was the thing that we were trying to avoid in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So I think really that boundary setting for that and really understanding we set this up for a certain benefit and then to stick to it and follow through on that and really decide what's going to fit best for your family. There are probably some listeners out there that are saying, hey, with my kid's schedule, it makes perfect sense for me to work 4 half days a week. Okay, great. Still make it work for you. But those are things that I think we get to really evaluate. And if we decide, hey, on Mondays, I'm not checking emails, I'm going to be off on a Monday, or hey, I'm going to take summer Fridays. Right. Cool, do that. We get that power to really be able to make those decisions for what's really best for us. And that's kind of the dream of what I think all of us go into real estate investing to really get for.
Yeah. And I think so many people lose focus, myself included, as to what you really want out of life, or you just get older and you actually realize what you want. And it's not the same as you thought you did when you were younger. But I've had like this huge transformation over the last couple of years. And I feel like some of it was like pressure of being a BiggerPockets podcast host, as to like, here's what all the other hosts are doing. You have to keep up. You have to grow and scale. You have to just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I've spent a lot of time doing personal development and testing myself as to putting myself in certain situations and being like, is this actually something that makes me happy? Is this something I enjoy? Is this something that's actually making any revenue at all? Or am I just literally doing it because that's what I should be doing? So like content creation, I've really been thinking about like, what part of that do I actually enjoy? Does that actually bring any benefit to my life? I'm not selling anything. I have books. I guess I'm selling my books. But other than that, I don't have these huge courses or memberships or things like that I'm trying to push. So really making that revelation of like, do I actually want to just grow and scale and have this $1 billion business? No, I don't. I don't have the work ethic for that. I don't have the endurance for that. I just want to live in the mountains in the winter and I want to live on the lake in the summer. And that goes back to my kids too. Like, I just want them to have something. And, you know, they've got a 529 plan, they've got a retirement, they've got rental properties that they can take over, whatever it may be. But also, the thing my kids love the most is being driven to school and picked up from school. And that is like the thing that they want. And if they go to their dad's after school, like they want to be able to call me and I can come right away to come get them when they're ready. And that is like the most heartbreaking thing, is when I say like, no, I can't, I have podcasts today, or I have this or whatever. So like, it's just, you may think your kids want all these things in this wonderful life, but like, it's those little things that actually matter. So I've really had to try to refocus my life as to like, okay, I may not make X amount of money this year, but I'm having that intentional, and my kids are still going to be okay. We're still making money. We're still building wealth, everything like that. But it's not this fast paced scale where I'm missing out on a lot of my kids' life.
That's beautiful. I feel like we get very caught up in this, have to get to the next level, have to like grow. And sometimes we don't necessarily think about kind of like the why behind it. I do feel there is a lot of the social media pressure. I do feel, you know, even people that like I follow, like I feel like, and one of the things I really appreciate about you and your social media is that I feel like you're actually doing the real estate. And you're actually like, I feel like there's a lot of other people in that kind of that influencer space that I feel like they're spending more time on either selling a program or doing social media content for a program, rather than actually being like, hey, here's actually what I'm doing within real estate, right? And then there are also people that I'm sure that we've all followed that you sit there, you compare, and you're like, what do you mean this person bought like their third house like today? Like, what do you mean it's Friday? They're closing on another 3 houses. They bought 16 on Thursday. They're closing on another 3 on Friday. Like, oh my God. And we tend to very much kind of compare ourselves to that. And that's just unfortunately nature of the world these days with what social media has really kind of grown. So I can absolutely understand the pressure of saying, well, I have to focus on this, I have to push that. But I actually really love that your social media is very much, here's what I do in real estate.
And it's really literally just like, this is what's happening today. It could be a video of my goats. It could be my kids making a prank video of them cutting the grass and they actually didn't cut it. You know, it's just so random because I actually do my Instagram. I don't have anybody that does any part of it, but it's funny because my contractor, he's very focused in his Instagram and really wants to grow it. So for this flip that we're doing, he hired a videographer and he's like, I will split it with you. So he'll make you reels, he'll do YouTube videos, stuff like that. He's going to come to the house
Yeah.
and film us, everything. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's great. But I'm like, this better not hold up my project. Like, I don't want to have to, like be like, oh, the painter's not coming until Tuesday because the videographer can't get there until that. Like, so I'm like stressing, like, just make sure
Right.
the project is going because I don't care that much about the content creation. I just want to get the job done and move on to the next project.
I will say, like, content creation, that takes so much time. But I totally
Oh,
see what you're saying. You don't want to be like, okay, great, let's redo now the kitchen cabinet installation from
yeah,
another angle. And then be
yeah,
like, no,
yeah,
no, but they're there, they're in. Like, leave them
right.
alone. Let's move on to the
Yeah,
next project.
yeah,
But no, no, but we need to capture it for like cameras,
yeah,
right? And I struggle with that. Right before I was leaving the Dominican Republic at the end of April, same thing. It was like, okay, let's go like film a couple things still while I'm down here
yeah.
on the beach before I go back to my
Right, right.
concrete jungle, like back in New
Yeah.
York. And I went to like, we went to this gorgeous like beach club. And I was just like, that is the most like gorgeous infinity pool. And it was like a Tuesday. There's
Yeah.
nothing better than being at a beach club in the middle of the week
Right,
when
right,
everybody else
yeah.
is working, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm sitting there and I'm like, I got the infinity pool to myself. I got a little like cabana over there. And I'm just sitting there. And then it was like, okay, so Becky, my husband was just like, oh, so like, should we get like the mic and like test it and like get it set up? And I'm like, oh, like I think like that, like over there, like there's not like the shadow over there. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Emilio, make me a mimosa. I'll be over there in the pool. And he's like, do you want me to take a picture? I'm like, I could care less. I'm
Yep.
like,
Yeah.
we just need to like enjoy this moment. Like we are very
Yeah.
fortunate to be able to be here. I'm enjoying this, just like you said,
Mhm.
with your goats, with the kids, cutting the grass. Like those are the moments that are really more important rather than being like, okay, this is the perfect angle
Yeah, and you know
shot,
what? That's
things
so
like that.
funny. I have found myself like literally thinking about like, let's do this way because that will look better on video. As far as like, let's do this with the kids, like literally everyday life, I feel my brain just like thinking about my next actions, next steps as to how it would look on Instagram. And I feel like that is such a bad mindset to have. And I really have like really dialed back on my Instagram of like even
Yeah.
posting at all because I don't want to continue that mindset of like, oh, let's go over here and walk out on this dock and like take this video because this will look nice. Like, I don't want to have to worry about taking the video. My childhood best friend, her mom never had a camera. I went on vacations with them all over the world. She never had a camera. Every year, she had a professional photographer come over and take pictures, and the kids would have a camera or whatever and stuff like that. And I think back on that, and it's like, wow, like my mom always took pictures of us and stuff like that. But I think, like, she was so intentional with their time and just
Yeah.
enjoyed, like, we went to, Disney World, they have the water park, and I can literally envision her just sitting there, so happy and just watching us splash into the water instead of, like, getting up, getting your phone, trying to get the perfect video, the picture, and everything like that, and, like, you go to the beach now, and that's, like, most of the parents is like, "Okay, smile, turn," myself included, and I just, like,
Yeah.
think about that moment as to and then how often are you actually going back and looking at pictures and videos? I really don't find myself doing that that often. So, I mean, I guess if you're
No.
someone that does that all the time, but yeah, definitely social media has really, really changed how people think.
Right. And then I feel like on the other side, you have followers, you have people that now are kind of looking up to you. And then now we're back in that spot, probably when we were teenagers, right? And you saw like women
Mhm.
in magazines, like, I have to look like that, or I have to be doing
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
or have that body type, whatever it may be. But now all of a sudden we're having people that are really kind of watching that. And I like that some people are able to move to a non-perfect Instagram or a non-perfect Facebook profile, because then that way we can kind of show a little bit more of like real life to be like, no, this is literally like my problem with like my
yeah,
rehab right now. We're like,
yeah, yeah,
nope, didn't get that property, like
right.
those things are okay, rather than just consistently showing this like one slice of a perfect moment in a
Hmm.
life, and then having everybody else be like, oh man, like that's the exact perfect like shot. Like, okay, see, my property doesn't look that good. My rehab didn't come
Yeah,
out that
yeah.
good. I did not look that good knocking that wall down, whatever it may be. But then
Or
really
like,
kind of pushing
yeah,
that forward.
even feeling the pressure to actually post. Like I have really let that go as far as like I don't feel the need to show all my before and afters or what's happening on, because like that takes time. That takes too much energy and effort now. And I just don't, I feel like I don't need that validation and that credibility that I definitely think posting online when I first started posting, that is literally having my Instagram. Literally, the only reason I'm the host of the Bigger Pockets podcast is because they found me on Instagram, and it's kind of
Sure.
all snowballed from there. So, like, I don't say social media is a bad thing at all. I just feel right now in my life, there's not anything I'm working towards or trying to build or gain where social media content is going to help me achieve that opportunity. So I'm not raising money. I'm not really looking for deals that I need people on social media to bring me, not selling anything. So I think that like right now, I literally just post if I have a funny real idea I want to do, or, it's a pretty flower in my yard or something. But I still would really love to post more educational stuff. But that's the other thing is like I know that I need to give back and I need to help educate other people and to learn and stuff. So that's one thing I would like to continue doing is actually not just like, wow, look at my before and after. Here's what I purchased at. Here's what my rehab is, but more of like, here's what my scope of work was, or, stuff that's
Right.
actually informational where somebody could take that and be like, oh, I could use this as a template for my scope of work, something like that. So that I really do want to do.
Well, I feel like that is kind of what you do,
I feel like I
being
haven't
the
in a
being
long time on my Instagram at least. But yeah, if on the podcast, I definitely do.
Well, I was just saying, I feel like between you being the co-host with Real Estate Rookie, with giving your time and donating
Mhm.
that to being here with me today for our listeners, these are that educational piece of really being able to share what you're working on, how other people can
Yeah.
get involved in that. But I do love that I feel like you are very much focused on your own rehabs and your own
Yeah.
portfolio. And I think there's something very just calming about being able to say, I'm going to use literally my Instagram just as a platform to share what it is that I'm doing,
Hmm.
not in a way for to gain anything or to grow anything at this point in time. And if that changes in the future and if there's the opportunity of something that feels right for you, that's fine.
Yeah.
But same thing for all of our listeners. Like you do not need an Instagram or a large TikTok following to be a successful real estate investor. Those two things are just
100%. Yeah.
absolutely not synonymous at all. You mentioned a little while ago for the first property that you were going to buy that you had funding from somebody else, that you were able to
Mhm.
get capital from somebody else for that property. I got to say, a bunch of our listeners are probably like, how did she do that for her first property? Can you share a little bit
It's
about that?
Yeah, it's a very unique situation. So everybody's going to say, "Oh, well, I
Aw.
wish I had somebody like that." But so the investor that I was working for, he was actually the dad of my friend growing up. He had 3 children, 2 daughters, and one daughter was my age and then an older son. And so I started working for him, and it was the older son who actually worked for his dad at one of his other businesses. And I approached his son and just said, "Hey, look at what your dad is doing. We should do that." And he had a bunch of money saved. And so we used his money. But it was all those kind of components. We've known each other since we were 2. So kind of that trust factor there. We were both working for his dad. We really were in different parts of the business, but some things overlap. So like we were talking every day. And then just the fact that, has seen firsthand the wealth his dad has built. And I just like explained to him more of like, here's the side of stuff we never saw growing up, but this is actually how a lot of it happened. And just like eye-opening experience to both of us. And so I just kept like talking to him about it. And then a property came up for sale. We looked at it and we bought it. So I still remember him like saying, I'm really trusting you a lot. Like, here's my life savings out of my savings account. And we're still partners today. We actually just closed on a 5-unit property and a flip together too. So we still do deals together.
And how many years has that been now?
That's been since 2013. We bought our first property the end of 2013, so 11 years.
11 years. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So I get why you said a little bit unique. And then once again, probably something that somebody's saying right now, like, man, I wish I had a connection like that. But there are still themes within what you just said that I want to kind of point out. One, you were working with somebody to start with that was experienced in the industry, right? So you were then kind of learning the ropes there. So it wasn't like you were a completely newbie. You were able to work for somebody. It was great that you got paid, but a lot of people will also just volunteer, donate time to work with an experienced investor just to kind of learn the ropes. So there still are options like that to just get kind of into that world, right? So that gives you a little bit more experience than just completely starting out as a newbie. Two, that's really networking. You're now involved in those communications. You're around certain players. You're around and talking to people that either have the opportunity for money, that understand real estate, that have been exposed to real estate. So I think then the second piece of that was really just networking. And three was actually the presentation. You recognized, hey, this could be a fit for somebody. And you actually had the conversation with that person to be able to do it. So those three things, I think every person still needs to do to be able to raise capital or to find kind of that private money lender. It's still those same three kind of activities. What I think is interesting about that story, Ashley, is that it wasn't the dad that had mentioned to his son, like, hey, son, why don't we partner up on this? But it was actually you that not only recognized that this could be a good partnership and went for it and actually asked for it, rather than going to the dad saying like, hey, don't you think your son might be a good partner for you? But you took that partner on for you, not for your boss.
Well, first of all, his dad was doing way bigger deals than we could do at that point in time. So my $70,000 duplex was a way better price point than the $700,000 properties his dad was buying. So,
did you ever think of asking him?
The dad?
Asking the dad? Yeah.
He actually became a private money lender for us. So he did a ton of private money deals for me and that first partner. And then also one of the daughters married a guy who had a couple rental properties. And then him and I ended up partnering on properties too. So the dad funded a lot of those deals too.
That's fantastic. But see, that's once again, that's using kind of that networking, that's staying in touch, building those relationships. And I think that's great. So I think to me, those are all still themes, even though clearly the person specifically is unique. But I think those are still all themes to being able to really kind of find that private money. And for any of our listeners out there, we do have other episodes all about private money lending and how to capital raise. So if you've not listened to those episodes, please do make sure to go back through the Lady Landlords podcast. We released a couple episodes recently that really walk you through the steps of capital raising. So go listen to those podcasts there. But the other thing, Ashley, I think that's really unique about, I guess, actually both of us here is that we invest in New York. And most people, we don't really hear that when you talk to other investors.
Right.
What made you stay in New York?
Comfort. If I'm like ready to buy a deal, I feel like it's very easy to actually find a deal where I haven't had to go out and look into other properties. So the landlord tenant laws are very, very tenant friendly in New York. So that is one obstacle. Of evictions can take a long time. So I really have to bake that vacancy rate into my numbers if I am going to, to worry about having eviction, because it can take quite a long period of time, 3 to maybe sometimes even 6 months, like right after COVID. But as far as like there's some changing laws and, there's regulations that might be coming out, might not be happening. I use my attorney for everything. Every little tiny question I have, I am asking my attorney. And that, I think, if you are investing in New York, is the greatest resource you can have, is an attorney who knows real estate. So he does all my closings, plus he handles everything for the property management company. We review our leases once a year with the attorney to say like, okay, is there anything new we should be worried about? We should put into here. Have any of your other clients had situations come up where we should be putting these in our lease agreements? Is there anything that we need to take out? Any kind of situation where we haven't handled it before, we, aren't exactly sure what the answer should be, we're running it by him and letting him, kind of what's the best way to handle that. But there's definitely aggravations with investing in New York. The high property taxes too is another downfall, but we've been able to make the numbers work on deals. So as long as you can make the numbers work, you know how the system works and you understand the laws, there's ways that you can still make your deal work and abiding by them.
I completely agree. To me, it comes down to numbers. And as long as we're understanding what the regulations are and that we know how to actually implement them,
Yeah.
I don't see anything wrong. I really like my returns here in New York. I'm very happy with that. And I like that better than a lot of the other states or markets that I've looked into, even the properties I own in the Dominican Republic. I like my numbers and this is what funds my lifestyle. So I'm going to keep it up. I love that you mentioned really going to that attorney every single year and saying, what's new? What passed? What do we need to now include? What do we now need to be aware of? It's really important to be able to stay in the know, especially in states that tend to be a little bit more on the tenant-friendly side, like we have over here in New York. So what's next for Ashley?
So I'm going to be doing a couple flips this year. The only flips I've ever done have been in Seattle. I partnered with James Daynard, one of the hosts of the BiggerPockets podcast, and I've done 2 flips with him there. Just kind of watched how he does things and learned a lot about the process. So I've done a ton of rehabs on rental properties. So I'm doing my first flip right now on my own. And then I have another house under contract that I'm going to be flipping this year too. So just kind of buffing up the capital a little bit. I'm trying to purchase a lake house right now. We usually tow our boat everywhere and we're getting kind of sick of it. So the lake house is going to be, we can use it as a short-term rental and then we'll get to use it, sometimes out of the year too. And then really just continue to grow my small rental portfolio, the small multifamily, just continuously adding units. We just added a 5-unit to it where we did seller financing with 10% down at 3% interest rate amortized 30 years. So like trying to find more of those deals would be amazing. But really, I'm trying not to have stress and to have a lot of obligations. And so really I've spent a lot of the past 6 to 9 months building out my systems and processes. I've hired a couple of VAs that almost completely run the property management side of things for me. So just continuing to add tasks to their plate of, here's little things that come up that they ask me. I'm going to build out an SOP. So, if this comes up again, they know exactly what to do. And so really working on my systems too, continuously growing that.
I'm hearing a lot of quality of life.
Yeah.
For you in the next coming months and years.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. Well, Ashley, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you doing that and to giving back to our community. That really means a lot to me. For any of our listeners out there, please do make sure to go listen to Ashley on the Real Estate Rookie podcast with BiggerPockets. You can go listen to my episode number 69 from a couple years ago, but feel free to go take a listen to that episode as well and all the new episodes that have come out as well. And do make sure to hit the subscribe button here for your Lady Landlords podcast. We release new episodes every single Tuesday. Ashley, thank you once again for being here. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Lady Landlords Podcast. If you're feeling stuck in your real estate investing journey, visit lady-landlords.com to book a 15-minute orientation call with me and see if you're ready to join our mentorship program. Or you can subscribe to our newsletter and join our Facebook group for exclusive real estate investing tips and offers. Invest with confidence. Become a Lady Landlord today.